What's going on, family? Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Ring Classics, number 3. We have champions present and past gathered together for a photo op. And this happens to be at New York's Yankee Stadium, 1937. Joe Louis would have his first World Heavyweight Championship title defense against Tommy Farr of Wales. Now, you're looking at some of the greatest fighters during that time, and we're going to go through them. I'm not going to go as extensive as I did in the last video. But let's take a look and see who's in that ring. Now, this man right here, you can hardly see him, but his name is Jack Johnson. Well, my opinion is that's Jimmy Braddock. Next to him is Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson became the colored heavyweight champion of the world in 1903 when he would defeat Denver Ed Martin. It would go 20 rounds, and he would defend that title 17 times. But then in 1908, he would take on Noah Brusso, who's the current heavyweight champion. Noah Brusso was from Canada. His name was Tommy Burns. And Jack Johnson would chase him around the world till he catch up with him at Sydney, Australia. And he would knock him out in 14 rounds. The establishment would cut off the camera because they didn't want to see a black fighter standing over a white fighter as heavyweight champion of the world. Next to Jack Johnson would be Jimmy Brodick. Jimmy Brodick was known as the Cinderella Man, but he was also known as the Bulldog of Bergen. He would become the World Heavyweight Champion 1935. And he would defeat Max Baer at the New York's Madison Square Garden Bowl. Now, Jimmy Braddock was an interesting character. During the course of the Depression, him and the other fighters, but him particularly, he was having some financial problems. And he really tried to do the best he could for his family. But times were rough at that time, and he would have to sleep in Central Park. He couldn't turn the lights on. He had to go to New York's Madison Square Garden and ask for money to help turn on his lights. But then he struck gold. Because Joe Louis had lost to Max Schmeling in 1936. So Max Schmeling would be the logical contender for the defense of Jimmy Braddock's crown. But money talks. And Joe Louis would have to give up 10% of his purse to Jimmy Braddock until the day he removed his gloves. With Jimmy Braddock, although he would get knocked out in Comiskey Park, 1937, in the 8th round, but he would be that much richer. Standing next to him would be Cisco Escobar. He would be the first Puerto Rican champion in boxing history. He was a bantamweight. Phenomenal fighter was Cisco Escobar. There was built a stadium for him in Puerto Rico. It stands till this day. Next to Cisco Escobar, this man right here, his name is Seferino Garcia. And Seferino Garcia would become the middleweight champion of the world. He would hold the New York Sack in the NBA middleweight championship belt. He would lose his title to Ken Overland. But he'd be in the ring with Henry Armstrong 3 times. He would lose to him in 38. He would be given a draw in 1940 in defense of his middleweight championship crown. And then he would lose to Henry Armstrong before Henry Armstrong retired. But Seferino Garcia was in the ring with fighters such as Barney Ross and many others. Standing next to him is Fred Apostoli. Fred Apostoli was a middleweight champion, but he was a phenomenal collegiate boxing champion. Standing next to Fred Apostoli is Leonard. the Ghetto Wizard. Benny Leonard would retire in 1925 as lightweight champion. He would get that title in 1917 when he defeated Freddie Welch. And he would make a comeback in 1932 because he lost $500,000 in the stock market that crashed in 1929. He's a very good fighter, Benny Leonard. Standing next to him as Lou Ambers, the Jicamaya Hurricane. Lou Ambers will be a lightweight champion of the world twice. He will lose his title to Henry Armstrong in 1938, and he will regain his crown from Henry Armstrong. He'd be knocked out in 3 rounds with Lou Jenkins. He would take the title away. Tony Canzoneri. Very good fighter was Lou Ambers, the Jicamaya Hurricane. Standing next to him is Barney Ross. Barney Ross lived in New York, and he, as a 5-year-old kid, would be moved over to Chicago. He would have 3-fight series with Jimmy McLaurin, the babyface assassin. He would take on Tony Canzoneri, Lou Ambers, Seferino Garcia, many others. Very good fighter was Barney Ross. And he was a welterweight champion. Next to him is Pedro Martinez. Pedro Martinez was another very good fighter. He was undefeated lightweight. Pedro Martinez. Very good fighter. Now next to Pedro Martinez was Jack Sharkey. You can hardly see him behind the shoulder of Pedro Martinez, but Pedro Martinez is standing right next to Jack Sharkey. Jack Sharkey was known as the Boston Gob, and he would become the heavyweight champion in 1932 when he would defeat Max Schmeling. In front of Jack Sharkey is Mickey Walker, the toy Bulldog. Mickey Walker would become a 2-time welterweight champion and a 1-time middleweight champion. They called him the toy Bulldog, and his name was Mickey Walker. He was in the ring with Theodore Tiger Flowers and Harry Greb and Dave Shade, Tommy Loughran, Primo Carnera. Well, he didn't fight Primo Carnera. He sparred with Primo Carnera. But he took on Max Schmeling. He was knocked out, and he went the full 15 rounds with Jack Sharkey. Amazing fighter was the toy Bulldog Mickey Walker. Standing next to Mickey Walker is Gene Tunney. Gene Tunney, the Fighting Marine. He would become the World Heavyweight Champion in 1926 in Philadelphia when he would defeat Jack Dempsey. And he would defeat him again in his first title defense in Soldiers Field, Chicago. It would be considered the famous long count when Jack Dempsey would drop Gene Tunney. Jack Dempsey didn't go to a neutral corner. And Jack Dempsey had negotiated that rule in his contract. Referee was Dave Barry, and he counted 14 seconds according to onlookers. Standing next to Gene Tunney was the Manasseh Mauler himself, Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey would become the World Heavyweight Champion in 1919 when he would take on Jess Willard. He thought he had him out in 1 round, but Jess Willard would be knocked out in 3. Jack Dempsey had his first heavyweight championship title defense against Billy Misk. He would take on Bill Brennan in 1920, New York's Madison Square Garden. That would be the first heavyweight championship bout at the new Madison Square Garden. He would take on Jack Sharkey and many others. Marcel Theo stands next to Jack Dempsey. Marcel Theo would become the middleweight champion when he would defeat William Landon Jones, William Gorilla Jones. And out of frame is Max Baer. Max Baer would become the heavyweight champion when he would knock out Primo Carnera in 11 rounds. Both men would go down 11 times. But Max Baer would be the heavyweight champion of the world. And he would lose his title to Jimmy Brodick. Out of frame is Max Schmeling. Max Schmeling was known as the Black Euling. He would give Joe Louis problems in 1936, stopping him in 12 rounds. But he himself would be knocked out by Joe Louis in the same New York's Madison Square Garden in July of 1938 in 1 round. So these are the men, ring greats, that are in the ring this evening. Joe Louis would take on Tommy Farr, and the fans got an opportunity to see some former, past, and current champions. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel.